Claire? I know I saw you.
He's muted, but he's here. He's
Okay.
talking. He's hitting his computer. He's mad.
Matt Tadaro? I don't see Matt. Okay. Corey?
Right
here.
Okay. Nikki?
Here.
Jack?
Here.
Steve?
Here.
Russ?
Here.
Eileen?
Here. Here.
And Jess is absent, and I'm here. So we're missing Matt. Okay. Before we get started, let me see if there is any public comment. I don't think I see anybody here representing the public, so we'll move on to the next, the approval of minutes. Meg, do you want to put the minutes up? I sent the minutes out to everybody. I'm hoping everybody got them yesterday. I did get some comments, and they should be in red here. They were pretty much, the comments were, we had 9 people at the meeting, not 11, so we had to make that adjustment on the vote. And then some clarity about one of the things. Meg, I can't actually read that, but could you go to the next page? There was just a clarification about the subcommittees that the communication subcommittee wanted us to put some wording, because they're not going to be able to send a postcard, put some wording on the mailing that goes out with the survey. So I added that to the wording here as well. And for some reason, I'm not sure why the track change is not showing here. And is that the right one? I may have. I apologize for this. It's the one
I don't think these are the correct minutes.
No, I don't think so
Sorry.
either.
I had two.
It's V3. And I can send them again if we need to. But those are the 2 edits where you can see here where it said 11. Do you see the V3?
Well, assuming it isn't fixed in V3, the date's also wrong at the top.
For the 10th?
That's correct. That document that we just looked at said February 24th.
Yeah, that was the wrong minutes. Okay.
Actually, it's probably still wrong.
I can't find the version 3.
Okay. Why don't you take it down then, and I will we'll deal with that. I will find it and send it over to you when we can. I apologize for that. The next thing is our new member is actually was traveling overseas and got stuck overseas with all the Iran stuff that was going on. So he is now, I guess, going to be doing phone interviews with 2 members of the select board. And so hopefully by the next time we meet, we'll know whether we have a new member there or not. On the moving on to the subcommittee updates, the town survey update, the subcommittee received a draft of the first round. It is a rough draft, and we're meeting tomorrow at 5 o'clock to discuss it. If anybody is interested in it and would like to join us for that, let me know. But my thought was after we get through this next version, because I think we're going to probably make a number of changes, then we can send it and discuss it. We'll put it on the agenda for our next meeting so everybody can see what it looks like, and we can talk a little bit about that. And we're working with Laura as well as our friends at Collins in terms of the communication and how that's going to roll out as well, and what kind of additional communications we can do. There's really not much we can do in the way of advertising. So we're going to have to get creative with flyers and things like that. So we'll be talking about that a little bit more at our meetings. Okay, and we did get a mention in the buzz today, if you all saw it, which was great. But I think I'll pass it over to the communications group and see if we have an update there.
Nikki, do you have anything to update with?
I don't think so, because I don't think there's been any movement since the last time we updated the group. So I think it's probably time to have a subcommittee meeting. While we're hanging out, I'll check and see if our first Facebook post was posted, though, because that was supposed to come out last week.
Okay, that would be good to do. I definitely want to see, what we can do about the visibility of this group. I'm a little concerned that we haven't really made it as visible as I'm hoping, and maybe because time is going on, I want to make sure that we start talking about how we can get what we're doing out there more. I think we probably need to talk about maybe doing, guest spots at different events in town. And maybe we can put that on our agenda, Nikki, if you guys want to talk about what those events might look like. I was thinking like the Council on Aging and the IAB, or various and sundry meetings around town. As you know, I did talk to the Chamber of Commerce, but I'm sure there are other meetings that would be a good idea for us to participate in.
Yeah, I mean, I think in just like when anybody is going through all of the committees trying to get a bylaw amendment passed or budget passed or whatever, I don't think it could hurt to just like schedule 5 minutes at each, the relevant boards and committees too around town to introduce ourselves.
I think that's great. And maybe we could, take some time in one of our meetings to really talk about what that would look like and which the meetings are, and then maybe get different people to do it, and we can put together a standard couple of slides or whatever if need be. That could be either slides or handouts for people. If we could, maybe if you guys can take a look at that.
Sure.
And then if you, however I can be helpful, please let me know.
Sounds good. We'll try to schedule something for later this week or next week.
Awesome.
And I just posted in the chat, I put the Facebook post, the link to the Facebook post on the town's Facebook page.
Awesome. Great. Thank you.
And make sure you're warming up that sign for us.
Yeah, they had a meeting about this, the electronic sign on the town common. They spoke about the policy last night at the select board meeting. They don't have a firm policy yet, but they had mentioned that that a few groups and organizations had already reached out and was like, when can we get on there? When can we get on there? So that'll be an exciting thing. And based on the way they were talking about it, Russ, I think that we would be able to have some kind of message. I will reach out once I know for sure what the policy is.
And for sure about the survey, we'll use it for the survey for sure. Yeah. Great. One of the things I did follow up on while we're talking about communications is on flyers. I talked to Patrick about whether there are any regulations about what we can and can't do in terms of flyers, and there are none. So we can do what we want on those. So to the extent we want to use them, I'd like to get involved in that, with your group, and we can talk about how we do it and where we want to put them and that sort of thing.
But you were saying advertising doesn't sound like it is a go.
Well, there's only one, in my opinion, there's only one real place to advertise in Burlington, and we can't do that and pay you. That is an issue. So
Got it.
that's why I think we're going to have to look at other vehicles.
And is any flyer creation? I assume there's no budget for anything, so
No, we'll just do it and get
do it
creative
through town
online, and
things.
yeah, and I'll go down to Staples and spend
Okay.
$40 and get it done. I mean, it's
Well,
Right.
I think Betsy, there are printers at the town hall, so even if we can't like go and spend town money to do it, there might be a way for them to print off, a couple dozen flyers for us or something.
yeah, I think so too. Yeah, they have color printers down there.
Yeah, I do
must.
believe so because they print off the annual Civic Expo
Right.
trifolds for us.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll take advantage of that, but so we're gonna have to roll up our sleeves and get creative on how to source this. Definitely, it's a it's not a big budget thing we're working on right now.
Yeah.
Okay. Meg, did you get those minutes? I just sent them. They would be in your email. Do you have them, or should we just move on? Okay. I am not seeing them.
She's muted, but she said, "Hold on a second."
Thank you. I'm looking forward to our next meeting, which will be live, and then we don't have these issues. All
Date's
righty.
still wrong for the record.
Okay, let's not do this because I don't think that's the right version. So I'm not sure what's going on there. Well, no, it is the right version. Meg, can you go to the next page? No, that's not the right one. Okay, I'm going to defer this to the next meeting. We'll do it. And I think that's probably the easiest thing rather than going through this now. Okay. Pat, where do you want to start?
It would be great. First of all, Anthony can't be here today. He's at another town. So we are going to start off. Our goal today is to work through the rest of the sections regarding the town administrator. And we're going to start with the memo that dated 3/19/26, section 4.3E, Human Resources Policy. And
Can you make it bigger?
excuse me? Oh,
No, I just asked Meg if she can make it bigger.
is that okay?
Well, does everybody have a hard copy? Or is it okay?
I do, but you can also look at the Zoom window itself, and you can click on that. There's a Zoom area at the top that lets you make it a little larger. At least for me.
Okay, go ahead.
Wonderful. So we have talked about 4.3E a few times and have been refining it as we go along. This new version, I'm going to read it out loud for you in case you can't see it. The town administrator shall prepare, subject to select board approval, implement and ensure compliance with the human resources system of said town. And we've included excluding the school department after some discussion, including but not limited to human resources policies and practices, rules and regulations, the human resources bylaws, negotiation of all collective bargaining agreements, and preparing the salary classification plan bylaw amendments for consideration of town meeting if necessary. This is the same language we talked about last time, I think, except for adding an exclusion for the school. Just some background, which I think we talked about last time. I'm sorry. I thought I heard someone. Sorry. Just for some background, the personnel rules and regulations do not exempt the school department. We put together a little chart, which is on the top of the next page, discussing that, Reading, Walpole, and Winchesters do not exclude the school department, although Dedham does, just for your information. I believe that Betsy had some additional communications with the town administrator that she may want to share. That is the reason for adding the excluding the school department.
Yeah. So I talked to Patrick about this and asked about the policies. The legally required policies are, the same across the board, but their school does have some specific policies outside of the unions that they adhere to, which are different from the town. So it felt like the right thing to do is to exempt the town, the schools on that in terms of the wording here.
So at this point, I just want to open it up for any further discussion or questions before we talk about whether this provision is acceptable to preliminarily move forward with. Does anyone have any comments?
Yeah, if anyone who's running, maybe Betsy, if you're running the meeting, the participants button will open and you can see everybody's raise hands if it comes up. So I have a hand raised, which is just asking the question, is there planned to be somewhere in the charter that might explain or at least point to or refer to the human resources practices of the school department, so that while we're sort of carving that out here, that is clarified in another area of the charter that we may or may not have at the moment?
The next section will be on elected boards and committees. In general, that human resources isn't usually included in other sections of the charter. If there was something that needed to be specific, it would be in the school department in the next article, which would be on elected boards and committees. There's not a plan to put anything in specific to them. That's generally, in some ways, this is just a skeleton outline, and only really with respect to what the duties of the town administrator are, would that be included.
I guess what I'm trying to make sure is that, we're going through the effort to ensure that the power and the duty is clearly illuminated as far as the town administrator's role. But then it sort of leaves that opening that then someone might ask, well, then who's in charge of our, how's that defined, or is that power granted, or et cetera, that kind of thing. So I don't know, it's food for thought.
I had a question. So the last time, didn't we talk, this is a last line, if necessary, I thought we changed it to as.
know what? I thought we did too. I'm not sure why that change wasn't made here, but I'm doing it right now as you speak.
Jack also has his hand up.
Yeah, I was the same question that Eileen had. I just want to discuss this as necessary. I'm not quite sure why it's even in there.
I think that this language is a carryover from the former language, and it's just in there as kind of deferential and respectful of town meeting's role in some of the process. For example, they would be involved in the appropriation of the money for the classification plan and the collective bargaining agreements. So it's acknowledging that they have a role in appropriation, but not defining, what parts town meeting has a role in, as that's defined in the rest of the charter, just as their legislative role and appropriations role, as opposed to the administrative and executive role.
Well, it says bylaw amendments, doesn't it?
Right.
So bylaw amendments have to go to town meeting. There isn't a question there.
That's true. I mean, are you interested in just removing the words "as necessary"?
Yeah.
I think that the wiggle room is if there's a matter, if this applies to, for example, the "as necessary," just making sure that the consideration of town meeting. Just
Well, you could say for consideration by town meeting for matters under their control or under their jurisdiction or something like that.
You're getting way too complicated. It says the classification plan bylaw amendment has to go to town meeting. There really isn't anything to discuss there. Unless you want to get rid of bylaw.
So if we get rid of "as necessary," that would do it.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned.
okay.
Bill, are you
So,
also proposing removing for consideration of town meeting if necessary? That way you're just stating the statement would say, and preparing the salary classification plan bylaw amendments. That's it. Because you're saying that the implication is all bylaw amendments go through town meeting. So staying as for town meeting is redundant.
Well, I think
Yeah,
we
you
need
can
to
do
be
that.
clear. I think on that one, I don't want anybody to be confused that town meeting's losing authority here. So I think even though it may be a bit redundant, I think it's probably worth it just to save some agita on some people's part.
So are we saying other than the bylaw amendments, the rest of it does not have, the town meeting has nothing to do with it?
No, that's not what we're saying. We're saying we're going to get rid of the words "as necessary" and put a period after "meeting," as Bill has proposed. Okay.
So one could read that as saying that the bylaw amendments are for the consideration of town meeting, but anything that precedes that is not.
Which I think is correct. Except maybe human resources bylaws. That does say bylaws.
And town meeting approves the results of the negotiated settlements too.
Okay.
So I'm wondering if that's why we have this for consideration of town meeting as necessary. So that and that's where it was, it might be at odd, and we're missing, because in case that town meeting applies to the whole slew of things, some things it's necessary, for example, the bylaws to go before town meeting, and some it's not, like the rules and regulations. The negotiation of the agreements doesn't go, it's the appropriation of the money afterwards. So that probably explains why as necessary or if necessary is in there in the event that it reads like it applies to the whole string of things instead of just the bylaw amendments. So for example, the human resources bylaws would go to town meeting as well. So the original language just makes more sense to me without the removing the as necessary because of the confusion about what goes to town meeting and what doesn't.
I'd put it back in then.
Okay, so, and have it as necessary back in. Does anybody have any comments about that?
So we're leaving it as necessary.
As necessary, right.
Okay.
Should we vote on that? That we're gonna, that would lead.
This is just preliminary. We may come back and revisit it later on when we're doing the whole review.
Oh, like everything else. Yes, Jack. Okay, so let's, Pat, are we ready to vote on that, do you think, at this point?
Yes. Yes.
You want
The
to,
sentence, subject to select board approval, that's in a funny place. They're just preparing things subject to select board approval and then implementing and ensuring it without? Or is the select board approving everything?
why, we didn't have select board approval before, so why is it in there now?
I don't know. I
Pat,
just see it. It just
I know,
sounds funny.
so I'm wondering.
Yeah, I think that I know that Anthony prepared this language and not me. But my understanding is this arose out of some discussions that you had, and and he added it to. I don't think that subject to select board approval needs to be in there because the town administrator, I think it's because the human resources policies are required to be approved by the select board. And for example, any negotiation of collective bargaining agreements are also included. So I think that's why it's in the beginning. But maybe that whole phrase could be moved if you're finding it confusing.
I just take it out.
Well, if we delete it.
Out, assumed.
When you get to the details of what the town administrator is doing, all these things are subject, they're all laid out as to what he has to do with the select board, aren't they? Aren't they laid out someplace else?
Well, here's where we're laying out what his duties are.
Right,
And
this is it.
but in general,
would it be fair to say the town administrator shall, subject to select board approval, prepare, implement, and ensure compliance with the human resource system of the town, exclude blah, 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 blah? Or is that
Makes
also
more sense
strange?
as a sentence.
Does that mean every time the town administrator wants to do something with that, he has to call a meeting of the select board and ask him if he can do it? Or does he get blanket approval at the beginning of the year or when he's hired?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that is weird. Is the only thing that I think I heard a little bit of this in the meeting that I happened to watch probably more recently than you guys lived it, but it was mentioned in respect to the select board having, a sort of a check and balance on the administrator. And I think it was about the human resources policies. So maybe there's a way to reword this in such a way that the listing of all the duties is there, and then the clause at the end is saying that it goes to either the town meeting or the select board or nobody as necessary.
Will all this stuff be laid out? Would all this stuff be laid out in the contract, the town administrator's contract that he has with the select board?
Well, I suspect some of it will.
Not in this level of detail. There may, in the job description that the town administrator would have, that would have more detail than this. This is intended to be rather vague, so rather broad, rather, so as you don't have to go back and change the charter in order to make changes.
Why can't we just take out subject to the select board approval? What would be the downside to that? Because I agree, it's weird where it is.
Yeah, as I said, I think it was added just to that concern about checks and balances. The other thing we can do is take it out, but then this is going to be reviewed by town council and the select board. And if they have any concerns about whether this is somehow transferring power that the town administrator doesn't have, they can weigh in on that at the time.
Anybody have any problems with that, removing it?
No.
Dump the responsibility on somebody else. I like that.
Okay, so then, Pat, why don't you read the paragraph so we can vote on it the way it
Yep.
would be? That'd be great.
Okay. The town administrator shall prepare, implement, and ensure compliance with the human resources system of said town. Do you want it to say of the town and not
Yes,
said town?
yes, yeah.
Of the town, excluding the school department, including but not limited to human resources, policies and practices, rules and regulations, the human resources bylaws, negotiation of all collective bargaining agreements, and preparing the salary classification plan bylaw amendments for consideration of town meeting as necessary.
Okay, that is the wording. Can I have a motion to approve it as
So moved.
a second?
Second.
Okay, Bill,
Yes.
Matt,
Abstain, since I wasn't here for the full conversation. Sorry about that.
okay. Corey,
Yes.
Nikki,
Yes.
Jack,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Russ,
Yes.
Eileen?
Yes.
Me, yes. Okay, so that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 yes, and 1 abstain. All right, rolling right along.
Great. Okay. So the next section, we're going to talk a little bit about are some additional duties or language for the town administrator. That is not just rewriting what you already have, but some suggestions for new things. If you could change it, there's a document. Well, let's go through it, and then if we need to change it, we will. There's a chart that we had, but I think we introduced it last time. So the first, what we really did was take a look at all of your comparable towns and see what other types of provisions do they have that you might find helpful. And one that pretty much across the board most have gives the town manager the authority to fix compensation of all town officers and employees appointed by the town. The word manager's in there, but that's only because we're taking a look at Reading's charter within the limits established by applicable appropriations. So what you have above in the human resources is the authority of the town administrator to essentially create the class and comp plan, the framework under which it is, under which people are granted compensation. But this fixing compensation, in general, that's likely what is happening right now. But most charters actually contain explicit language saying that the town administrator or manager has the authority to fix compensation of officers and employees appointed by the administrator. And that allows them some negotiation within the range of the class and comp where they're placed in that amount. It allows some negotiation when hiring new people. I think it's pretty standard, and it's in most charters, and we can include it. But I thought we'd raise it for some discussion.
So right now, as I understand it, what happens is that for anybody who is reporting up through the select board, any of those departments, the compensation is, I mean, there are grade levels and people are slotted into grade levels and that sort of thing. The actual compensation, I think, for the department heads is probably the town administrator within the budget that they have to balance it through. And it's the external, the boards and committees, I think, that how, I'm not sure how that would work. It depends, I guess, on whether they have the authority to, who has the authority to fix compensation
Right.
with the boards and committees. I think that's really the crux of this one, right?
Isn't it explicitly excluding those? Because it says appointed by the town manager.
So let me ask you a question. Given the wording that we have been talking about for hiring, where the town administrator, with the approval of the elected board, who's the hiring? Is it the elected board? I mean, or is it the town administrator?
At the forum the other day at the with the business forum, Barbara and I had a bit of a discussion with Patrick, and what he raised is, and I was not aware of this, apparently at some point in the past, a particular independent elected board tried to exceed the budget recommendations and push for more money to give somebody a raise or something. And that was the concern. In my experience, either on the planning board, or the Ways and Means, and what have you, that's all worked out when the budget is done, and when town meeting votes on it, the individual department, independent elected or not, can't exceed their bottom line.
But they could
and they can't move money from line to line. Do I remember that correctly, Bill?
Nope. They're not supposed to move money from line to line.
So they can't.
The school committee can do it, school department, but not anybody else.
But when you're talking line to line, you're talking a bigger thing. Like if you have a department budget of compensation for $100,000, you're not going down to say Susie Smith is at $50,000. So as a practical matter, and how this would be, this would work in this situation. Somebody could say, okay, well, I'm not going to give Susan 50,000. I mean, I'm not going to give her 5,000. I'm going to give her 2,000, and I'm going to give John over here 7,000 because I think he's doing a better job. I mean, so it's the department budget that can't change. It's not the individual within that department, correct?
I believe that's how it works.
The total line for salaries and compensation can't change. They can't take money from travel and
Are you
type
sure
thing
about
and move
that,
it
Jay?
into the compensation.
Are you sure about that?
Well, everybody fits into a slot.
Right, there's a range, or there's that slot. But as Betsy said, what happens when you get to that time and you're like, yeah, you know what? I don't think so. I think that money is better spent on this line item. I mean, don't they have that
Right.
flexibility? As long as the bottom line doesn't change?
No, they don't.
Okay, well, I guess I'd want to just confirm that with Patrick.
School committee can do that all day long, but
Yeah, but
individual departments cannot.
but we're talking layers of detail. I'm with Eileen. I can't imagine that if the compensation budget for the Council on Aging is $100,000, and one of their employees, and when she was putting together a plan, she was thinking, well, I'm going to give her, $1,000 raise.
Yep.
And I'm going to.
I wasn't looking to get into this part of the discussion. I was simply pointing out the question that Patrick raised as to why the select board or the town administrator might want such language.
Correct. And that's what I'm saying, is that they could change when you get down to that level of specificity.
Who's they?
The board. If we have
What board?
Say it's the health Department of Health, and they say, here's our budget. We have a salary line that says we're going to spend $100,000 this year, and rather than giving this person a raise, I'm not going to give them anything, but I'm going to give somebody else twice that amount. They can do that because the number at the end of the day is the same in terms of the increased salary line.
You mean if they take from Peter to give to Paul?
Yes.
But it has to fit within
That's not gonna happen.
the range of his classification.
Okay.
Right. Yes, but those ranges are pretty darn broad, so you can do that. I'm just saying that if this is, I'm asking the question about who is considered the one who's appointing. If somebody hires somebody, and the town administrator is hiring somebody for the Department of Health, for example, and the Board of Health says, yes, we really want this person, we approve, and I'm assuming there's a salary discussion that goes along with that. Who's the hiring manager? Is it the board or is it the administrator? That's my question.
Can I
talking about administrator?
Can I add something I'll read the line that we have in the latest version of the charter about appointment, and it might make sense to apply the same language and restrictions to this and then figure out the other answer later. But it says, the town administrator shall appoint and remove, subject to chapter 31 of the general laws, all department heads, all officers and employees for whom no other method of appointment is provided in the charter, except the town accountant, treasurer, collector, town council, and employees of the school departments. The town administrator may not appoint or remove persons, blah, blah. We don't have to go through that part. So that appointment power is restricted by other clauses that may or may not as yet exist in the charter, but we expect will exist in the charter. Might this adopt the very same clausing? And that begs a bigger question, which is to be answered. From my standpoint, it is important to make sure that somewhere the answer lies here so that someone who is not sure can find the answer. That's part of the problem I think we have now, is there's confusion and not clarity. Now, as to should that financial fixing power lie with the board that is hiring the person, and therefore it'll be spelled out in their section, or should it be sort of defaulted to the town administrator because that's what they're getting? That's sort of a different question.
I think one of the problems that they're trying to avoid is if each individual elected board can, without any restraints, determined what the salary will be for their clerk. We now have interdepartmental war. Why is a comparably experienced clerk in one department going to get paid a lot more than a comparably experienced clerk in another department? And I think that's part of what Patrick was saying, that there's got to be some parity in here.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
yeah.
there has to be some place outside of the individual elected boards to maintain that parity so you don't have war between individual departments.
But isn't that defined in the whole level, step, blah, blah stuff?
There's ranges, yeah.
But there are ranges. So yeah, I think what this does, Jack, I think you're right. I think that this kind of a provision puts a it means that you have somebody who's looking at the whole parity issue, so you don't get one department going out of whack with another department.
I think that's the intent. Otherwise, everyone would be bidding for the job in another department. They'll be abandoning theirs, the ones the lowest pay one. They'll be looking to go somewhere else.
Well, that does happen.
And that does happen, right? So that, are we saying then it makes sense for us to incorporate something like this in our charter draft?
Yeah. I have a dumb question. So to fix the compensation of town officers, has that been defined somewhere? Who are the officers?
No.
I don't think that wording actually applies to us, does it?
I don't know who they are.
Yeah, I don't either.
So
that would be like the treasurer.
Yeah, secretary or
it would be like, I think that's like, you could probably get and just say employees, right?
Where's Pat? Pat,
well,
what's
the compensation for the various elected boards have a stipend. I don't know if that's intended to cover that.
So we can make a note to define officers in a better way. Sometimes the use of the word officers is for statutorily regulated employees and staff, like the town clerk, the town treasurer, people who, those are considered, they're holding the office of the town clerk. So that's why that term isn't included in there. And, I agree, it does make sense to make a note in our definition section to maybe define the word officers to make it clear that that's what you're referring to. But officers are generally those that have a specific statutory role.
Okay.
Then, can we make a note to define it? I think that's a good idea.
Does it also make sense to mirror the language that's in 4.3 section C, where it's explicit that unless something else carves it out, this is the answer?
If you go to section 1.8 definitions, it has C, officers, but it doesn't say anything. It just says officers.
Well, we haven't done any definitions yet, so we're.
Yeah.
There was a suggestion earlier, so we put a placeholder there.
Okay, Russ, where were you? Section 1?
So unless you're looking at a copy of the charter, which we aren't looking at the moment, but the latest version of the charter, section 4.3, the thing I read earlier, it's part C, it's talking about the town administrator shall appoint and remove, subject to blah, all department heads, all officers and employees for whom no other method of appointment is provided in the charter. And then there's an exception and such whatnot. But should that language be mirrored here in the sense that we are stating the same authority to fix compensation for all department heads, officers, and employees for whom no other method of compensation fixing is specified in the charter within the limits of blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't have to write it. You write it. But using the same language of limiting.
Does that make sense, Pat?
Well, to me, I think it overcomplicates it a little bit and is a bit redundant, because you've already defined the situation. You're using the same exact situation under which the town administrator would be appointing.
Got
So
it.
that's already defined, and to use the same language again may make it a little confusing and redundant. That's my opinion, though. If
So,
you
Russ, are
look at
you okay with that?
100%.
Okay.
The only question I would have is, today, how is compensation fixed? In the sense of, is it fixed by the town the town administrator, and also it is fixed by various other groups?
Yes.
And so the fundamental question, regardless of language, is, are we trying to alter that it is fixed by other groups, and in order to sort of meet the desire here of parity and less confusion and a little more sort of across the board, for all those reasons, we're explicitly trying to make sure that the town manager isn't, or the town administrator would be basically being the person who is ensuring that compensation is fixed.
There is a salary and classification chart approved by town meeting, which has got ranges. So different jobs are assigned different levels of classification.
Yep.
And so the wiggle room is simply the range, which is not a huge amount.
I get that, and I'm cool with that. I'm just making sure currently there is also wiggle room that is currently exercised by, I assume, a board or a committee or someone.
Yeah, and this is just allowing some level of consistency to Jack's earlier point.
Yep.
Okay, so are we ready to decide whether we want?
As long as we're talking about 4.3 subsection C, I have a little note there that added at the end. It says, unless it's been approved by a majority vote, and I want to just add a regularly scheduled public meeting. That should not be done by.
Can you table that for another time so that we're not
I was going to say, Jack, can we hold off on that, please? I want to finish this up. Okay, so let's, the wording here that we, with the fact we'll have a definition that we're going to recommend an inclusion of this kind of wording in this section. I believe that is the proposal on the table. Is there anybody, should we vote on that?
Sure.
Okay.
Could you read through what we're voting on,
Okay.
just so I'm on the right page?
Pat, can I have you read that?
Sure. It will be another section onto the last one. We'll use something very similar to the Reading language to fix the compensation of all town officers and employees appointed by the town administrator within the limits established by applicable appropriations and any compensation plan adopted by the town meeting.
Okay.
So it's for employees that essentially come under the select board.
What?
For those appointed by the town administrator,
Right,
which
whatever he
will
can appoint. All right.
define, right.
Which the earlier appointment is widened based on earlier discussions, just to be clear.
Okay,
Right.
so
We'll be going through the other boards and talking about that.
okay, so that's the proposal that we're going to vote on, that wording of including that wording in this. Everybody understand? We're ready to vote one way or another? Okay. Bill?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
Corey?
Yes.
Nikki?
Yes.
Jack?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Russ?
Yes.
Eileen?
Yes.
Betsy, yes. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay. Pat, on to the next.
Okay. The next provision is one that it's a record keeping provision, one that most towns use. It's fairly straightforward and is probably something that's done by the town administrator anyway in annual report type of situation. But essentially it says the town, will say administrator, shall assure that a full and complete record of the financial and administrative activities of the town is kept and shall render a full report to the select board at the end of each fiscal year and at such other times as it may require. So this is something that town administrators and managers do already. But the purpose of this is to kind of give this a home. Say it's the town administrator who drives this record collection of both financial and administrative activities of the town. It keeps it in a home in one place in the town administrator's office. And they are likely doing that already. It's just language that's reflected in most charters. And I thought it would be good for you to include this here as well, just to give a full picture of what a town administrator's duties are.
Okay, any comments? Jack?
That does not preclude, I put my hand up for before, so I'm low. That does not preclude them from putting warrant articles in the January meeting to move money from one department to another, which they're allowed under mass law. But they have to have town meeting approval, but they can do it. So this doesn't preclude them from doing it. That's all I want to know.
Correct. It does not change anything. It's just about making sure that the town administrator keeps a record.
So it's like an
Okay,
annual report.
which can be updated by whatever changes are made in January, moving money around. Okay.
Exactly.
Any other
Fine.
questions?
And at other times as it may require. So yes, it can be updated.
Any other questions? Jack, I think your hand's still up. So, okay. So, Pat just read that. I think let's see if there are no other questions. Let's see if we can. The question is whether we
Just a comment.
Yeah.
This is already done. This is already done by the town accountant, and the select board issue reports that cover this material.
Right, and but the town accountant. Okay, but is that where are you getting that from, Steve?
The bylaws.
So certain departments may record their own records, and this is making the town administrator kind of responsible for assembling and coordinating the records of the different departments and presenting them in a which they're already doing in keeping this, but it just gives it a home for that. But yes, it does not change the fact that individual departments are, and in some cases by law, required to file their own reports.
So essentially, you're telling him he has to do his job.
This is just outlining another part of the job and documenting it in here as separate. And it's as from what Pat said, it sounds like it's not just the financial part, which the town accountant would be doing. It would be encompass more things than that.
Ultimately, it stops with the town administrator. His job is to see that the other people get it done and give it to him, and he keeps the record. I guess I don't think it changes anything.
Okay. Then let's vote about whether we.
I had a question. But
sure.
So Pat, does this include the clerk's office and all that data?
It does not. The official record keeping duties of the clerk are different. That's a different function. Although one part of the report might be the clerk has done these things, it might be a broad list of, the clerk has accomplished their functions as a clerk, but it does not mean that the town administrator keeps the same records that the clerk keeps as the keeper of the records, which are their official duties under state law.
Okay, any other comments before we vote on whether we want to include this or not? I don't think I see any. So, all right, Bill?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
Corey?
Yes.
Nikki?
Yes.
Jack?
Yes.
Steve?
No.
Russ?
Yes.
Eileen?
Yes.
That's a yes. Okay, so that's 8 yes, 1 no. And the no,
Now,
Steve,
this language will be as a subset of,
it's just another, yeah, it'll be listed as an additional.
it'll be just put into the existing paragraph, or be a subset of it, a subparagraph.
It's one of the lists of 4E. I mean 4.3. So it'll be another letter under 4.3.
Another letter. Okay.
Okay, and Steve, just so for the record, because could you just explain kind of the rationale on the no?
It's superfluous. These tasks are already stated to be done in other parts of the bylaws and in the definitions of the town offices.
So what happens if we incorporate this, if we do this, does that mean we delete something in the bylaw? I mean,
Wouldn't it be just simply an addition, right? This is stating that the town administrator will have an additional duty, and that duty is to compile a report and to deliver it to the select board.
I don't see it deleting, but if there's a conflict between the bylaws and the charter prevails.
Right. Pat, you want to comment on that?
Exactly what Jack said. Generally, bylaws will flesh out and provide more specifics, and there might be more specifics for each department and what their duties are bringing to the table. This is kind of an overarching common duty. On the other hand, it's whether you include it or not, it's intended to provide instruction and showing what the town administrator's duties are in addition to those by the departments. I mean, you do not have to include this. It's likely being done anyway. But
I think we just voted to do it, so I think let's move on. I don't want to go back and do this, go through it again.
Great.
Why don't we move to the next page, which is keeping inventory and property?
Yep. Great. So most towns have something included that just simply says that the powers and duties include assuring that a full and complete inventory of all property of the town, real and personal, is kept, including all property under the jurisdiction of the school committee. So this is intended to just provide a list of the property, have someone who's in charge of this and understands what the town owns. And, likely this is done in some way, shape, or form, but this is giving this job to the town administrator to keep track of these things in one place. Instead of having them, somebody knows what the recreational property is and someone knows what the school property is. It allows it to be in one place for transparency. There are pluses and minuses to this. This is a job to put this together. It's does require some work on the town administrator's part to collect and maintain this list. But on the other hand, it's fairly common and a good practice to know what the town's property, both their real property and their personal property, what the town has. So it's a best practice, although it is not without some work on the administrator's part. So it's something for you to consider whether this is something that you'd like to add to the charter. Most towns do keep this housed in the town administrator's office as a requirement of their position. But I can also tell you there's a lot of towns that are behind on keeping up to date with this list. So it's helpful. And as you see, it's pretty vague. It doesn't say how often it has to be updated, but it's good to have a base starting point.
Okay. I just one of the comments I was looking at this. One of the town meeting items was about a piece of property the town owned that kind of like nobody really knew they owned it, or a lot of people didn't know they owned it, and it kind of, as I understand it, it initiated another project which said, let's go find other pieces of property that the town owns. And I believe Patrick was charged with going and finding some other pieces of property. So I personally think this is a great idea. So, and because we just had that thing with the article about a little squidge piece of random property that the town had taken over by, I think the people didn't pay their taxes, so the town got it. And so I think there are more of those, but I think it's a good idea to have an inventory. So that's just my.
You're talking tax title property.
Yeah, remember that one piece of property was taken by the town because people didn't pay their
Does
taxes.
the town really own tax title property?
I just remember that we agreed to do something with that property at town meeting, at the last town meeting. That's all. I can't get into I don't know the legal details of it, but this particular provision rang a bell with me because Patrick had said he had to go out and find if there are other little pieces of property the town owned, and make sure they're documented someplace. So that was just a little anecdote. Nikki?
Yeah, I would advocate for this because I think it's a good practice, but I also think that there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes to assemble something like this already. Patrick, the assistant town administrator, has been working on a unified capital plan, which is going to sort of necessarily have all of these items listed anyway. Because everything's going to have their place on the plan. So I think it's good practice, but I also think it's not overly onerous just because I feel like that's already in process.
Yeah, me too. Okay. Any other comments?
Yeah, if the town administrator is required to keep an inventory of all property and subject things that the school committee has, he has to have some leverage to force the school committee to do it, or just be responsible for whatever the school committee reports to him or the school department reports to him. Yeah, we can't make him responsible for something he can't control.
Well, do you anticipate that will be a problem? All he needs to do is have a list, a complete inventory. So,
well, it says a complete inventory, including the school. So
right,
he has to rely upon the school reporting it to him. I don't think that we can force him to do the inventory.
Well, I can't imagine the schools, if asked, wouldn't give them a list of all the stuff they have.
If they don't have a list, they can't give it to him.
I feel like I hear what you're saying for sure. You're pointing out like sort of a structural question, but this may be inherent in trust that a town government will cooperate to some degree. Because you're right, unless we also aren't going into deep detail on any delegation that the town administrator might execute and what happens when that falls apart, even if it's another group that the town administrator doesn't have direct authority over. So I think you're right. And also it feels like one we let slide because that's, when the town administrator reports the inventory and the inventory has a big blank space where the school committee stuff is, that is a problem that the select board could address at that time and decide how they want to proceed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not necessarily a blank space. It's just not up to date and accurate.
All right. I use an extreme example.
I don't want to hold the town administrator responsible for something he has no authority to control.
So he's responsible for compiling the report.
It's not controlling it. So.
As full and complete. And yes, that will be an imperfect process for sure. But the judge of that will be the town, the school board, the select board, I would imagine. Or
actually, if I guess what you say is if the school board doesn't give him the accurate information, he can only report what he's given. And that's what his job is to report that according to this. Bill, you had a comment.
It says both real and personal. So what's the personal? I understand the real.
Personal, meaning desks, computers, that sort of thing? I don't know.
No, generally that it means vehicles, and, personal property as, as reportable and under the excise tax and other laws. So it has a specific legal meaning, and it does not include desks necessarily. It includes mostly it's vehicles. We're talking like fire trucks and school vans.
Is that something we should define?
It's not defined in other charters. It's kind of a commonly accepted understanding of that.
I think it's not commonly understood on anybody in the committee, so maybe it might be a good idea to add it.
Yeah, I'll take a look at what others have done with it. And when we come back to right now we're just talking about, do you want this in here? We'll come back with the precise language, and I'll make a note to take a look at making sure that that's clear.
Okay. Okay, any other comments before we vote about whether we want to include this?
Should we vote on it when it says vague and incomplete?
My understanding is all the votes for this whole section we've been doing is not the exact language that would be in the charter, but rather the affirmation that we would like them to add something like that to the charter.
Okay.
Right, and that will give us the draft language that we'll approve next time. So yes, this is the intent to add the inventory role into the town administrator job.
Sure.
Any other comments? Are we okay? All right. Bill?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
Corey?
Yes.
Nikki?
Yes.
Jack?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Russ?
Yes.
Eileen?
Yes.
Okay, me, yes. Okay, that's everybody. Okay?
Okay,
Coordination of town agencies.
great. Did you have a number that you wanted to record for that vote?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. It was everybody.
900,
Okay.
is it?
9-0.
Great. So the next two are language that's only in Dedham, which I thought was interesting to address some of your concerns about siloing and some of the concerns about, for example, if a complaint comes in about, so let's say an athletic field, the rec department is handling it, but also the town administrator gets the complaint, and how do they work out how you respond to something? So I thought that the next one, it was some interesting language that Dedham had that I thought might be something that we could work on if you were interested for Burlington. And it included the powers and duties of the town, in that case manager, shall include but not be limited to the following: to coordinate the activities of all town agencies serving under the office of town manager and the office of select board with those under the control of other offices and multiple member bodies elected directly by the voters. Provided, however, that for the purposes of effecting coordination and cooperation among all agencies of the town manager may require the persons so elected or their representatives to meet with the town manager at reasonable times to submit such reports and summaries of actions taken as may be deemed to be necessary or desirable to have available for the purposes of such coordination. So, for example, it gives what's happening now on an informal basis is that if a question comes in or if a constituent calls, the town administrator reaches out to all the appropriate parties and coordinates who's going to respond to this. Are you going to respond? Are we going to respond? This is interesting language that allows the town, that kind of gives a formal role for the town administrator to coordinate the activities of these agencies. And And although we can talk about the language and wordsmith it, but it allows the town manager to a more formal way of saying, can you come, can someone from the board come talk to me, so we can figure out how we're going to handle this. It allows for a lot more it allows for the coordination to be centered in the town administrator's office, in some respects a role that he's already performing. But I thought you might want to discuss this and look at the language and see if in concept this idea works for you, and if there's any of the language that you're interested in including.
I'll be happy to start. There's the word require, so that doesn't make it optional. And it says deemed to be necessary and desirable. Who is it that deems it necessary and desirable?
I think the town administrator in that context, Jack.
I'm sorry, say again.
I said in that context, I think it's the town administrator.
I look at this and, we get directly by the voters. Then we get to provided, however, everything after that provided, I would get rid of. It's given authority to the town administrator over other boards to do what he wants them to do. And report such. So the planning board has to report to the town administrator. You talk about, if there's one little example of a complaint, fine, it should go back up. It should go back to him so he knows. But this doesn't. It's not limited to such an issue. This is general coordination of all town departments.
So I'm not interested in the paragraph.
Any other thoughts?
If I could jump in, I get what Bill is saying, and I'm sorry, my dogs are being insane. I get what Bill is saying, and I do somewhat agree with it. I also just want to reflect a little bit on the fact that this coordination that is relatively new has begun happening because there's a communications officer employed by the town, and we needed to have a communications officer in our employ in order for this work to get done, right? There just was so much work to do to coordinate that we needed to hire another staff member to do it. And so it almost feels like it bakes in that communications officer role, which of course, as a communications person, I'm a super huge fan of. But I also wonder how feasible it is for the town administrator to do all of the town administrator work and also go coordinating these agencies without that support. So that's my only concern about it. I do think that something like that is, again, a good practice, but I don't know. I worry, especially after that part, after the semicolon that Bill was talking about.
Yeah. I didn't look at this as a communication thing, Nikki, quite so much as you. I didn't even think of the communications officer playing a role in this one. What this kind of spoke to me on is the feedback we got during the stakeholder things about the silos. And then in talking to people, because what a lot of the different departments, the ones under elected boards even said, we want to have meetings. We want to have a meeting, like department head meetings on a consistent basis where we know what everybody's doing. So if the DPW is going to do construction over here and I'm planning on having an event, I probably don't want to have my event when the DPW is doing that. It was like that kind of coordination and collaboration, more as a kind of managerial meetings. And the town administrator was calling the meetings, and I think Patrick called some. But they had no authority to do that. So they were doing it. People wanted it. People came to it. People liked it. But there's no no enabling.
It's not formalized.
It was just done because people wanted organically were trying to find a way to coordinate things. So I look at this one not from town administrator telling people what they can and can't do, so which means it really needs to be reworded. But I do like the idea of calling out the fact that the town administrator has the ability and the authority to call department head meetings or that kind of collaboration and cooperation kind of that kind of activity, because somebody's got to do it. I mean, if we have all these different departments and everybody's not talking to each other, they're bumping into each other, and we know they are. So I like the concept of enabling the town administrator in a way to legitimize the fact that they're calling these interdepartmental department head kind of meetings to encourage collaboration among the different departments.
Well,
My understanding was prior to recent events, there was only 3 department head meetings a year, and it was immediately prior to town meeting. That has changed. My understanding is there are monthly department head meetings. And the purpose there is so departments aren't working at cross purposes, or the same effort is being expended by 2 different departments. An example that was given to me was 2 different departments were writing a grant for the same money to do the same thing.
So then are you saying that the town administrator is currently coordinating the activities of all town agencies serving under the town manager and the office of select board with those under the control of other offices and multiple member bodies elected directly by the voters?
I don't think they're
calling department head meetings.
They have the responsibility for kind of assuring the collaboration of the departments together. So I think this goes a little bit too far in terms of how much authority they have. But
I mean, isn't that the definition of coordination?
Maybe we get rid of coordination. Well, coordination is like, I have an event over here and you're going to be digging up the road. So I'm going to delay my event so you can dig up the road. That to me is like coordination. We're coordinating our events, right? And collaboration means we're all working in together in the same direction. So I guess I'm looking at it a little bit differently. And I think it's important that the town administrator be empowered by this to actually call the meetings and have people show up with an expectation that when the meetings are called, they should show up, because that's the only opportunity to get rid of these silo things that were happening. But I think it needs to be reworded.
Can I also just play devil's advocate for 1 second? Again, I think it's a great idea. I do think coordination should be the responsibility. I wonder if this particular phrasing is a little prescriptive for what you would see in a charter typically. And I wonder if we would leave everything before the semicolon, and then the rest can be left to policy and
Yeah, that's why I read the first part before the semicolon, and that's it, because I think it seemed as though folks were already sort of implying that after the semicolon is a bit much, but before the semicolon sort of loosely defines what the duty is that we're asking. And it is worth acknowledging, yes, this is a duty that it would be new to the role of the town administrator, but it also appears to be one that is required enough that it seems to be starting to happen and already getting positive feedback that it is happening. So it feels like the kind of thing that would make a lot of sense to enshrine as a duty that we want to see continue happening.
Yeah, somebody has to be responsible for calling the meeting, and that might as well be the town administrator.
Exactly. So Pat, and I think we're all in agreement on that point. And I think maybe if you could take the essence of that and maybe draft up some language on this one without going
Yep.
so deep
Are you-
into the responsibility.
Are you comfortable with everything before the semicolon, or would you like me to even soften what's before the semicolon?
I'm not really comfortable with he coordinates the activities. That's giving him the authority to say what goes and what doesn't.
Right.
What about facilitate the coordination of the activity?
There we go. That's some good words.
Nice.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, bingo.
Great.
Okay, are we
And
all
then
in
leave it
agreement
at
on
that.
that?
It's vague enough to, it's broad enough to allow him to be the starting point for that,
Right, right.
for him or her.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So,
If
and are we, I think we're,
do you want to take a vote on the concept?
yeah, let's,
Of-
I'm going to take a vote on the concept of the coordination role to facilitate collaboration. Okay. Bill,
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
Corey,
Yes.
Nikki,
Yes.
Jack,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Russ,
Yes.
Eileen?
Yes, yes.
Okay, me, yes. Okay, so that's 9-0. Good. Okay, next.
Yes, let's move to the next one, which is other language. This is really, I'm raising this for discussion so that we could craft something that will work for you, or, we can ignore it completely. So this is regarding supervision and directing employees. That in Dedham, it says the duties of the town manager include, but aren't limited to, supervising and directing all appointed department heads, directors, principal duties, and principal agents of elected and appointed multiple member bodies with respect to the day-to-day operational and administrative matters in a manner consistent with the town's personnel bylaws and policies, and if applicable, contracts, collective bargaining agreements. The town manager shall, in connection therewith, provide for an annual review of such department heads, directors, principal deputies, and principal agents with respect to day-to-day operational and administrative matters, following consultation with the respective multiple member body or its designee. What this is getting at is, obviously the elected boards are making the policy decisions, but the administrator is the person who is in the office meeting with these people. And so this is a starting point for discussion for you. If there's any part of this you're interested in, if you're interested in defining the town administrator's role with respect to day-to-day supervision, this also includes annual reviews for department heads, et cetera. I'm not sure how that's being handled right now for employees. I know that a lot is already covered by collective bargaining agreements for some of this. So I'm not suggesting that you need this level of detail, but I thought it would be a good place to start to hear from you of whether you want to include something about the town administrator's day-to-day supervisory authority.
I don't like it.
I don't either.
I don't know either.
It's
I would vote that we don't do this one.
Okay.
But how about other people?
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, I see it allowing the town administrator to micromanage the staff of independent boards. An example, and this was a discussion Barbara and I had with Patrick at the meeting the other night, where the planning board and board of health and others have nighttime meetings and staff is required to go to them. If there are 3 meetings a week and there's 2, 3, 4 hours each, that the person can be allowed, if there's nothing terribly important going on, to work from home that day, a day. That was a problem back a couple of years ago on the planning board that, another department complained that, Kristen was working from home. And so that micromanagement, I think, has to be left up to the discretion of the board as to how they manage their employees as long as the job is getting done.
I would also add that it just feels like this is antithetical to all of the arguments that we've had for the last several months about making sure to keep the separation between the elected boards and their departments and the town administrator. So I would say it's a pretty resounding no on this one for me.
Okay, I think we may have all agreed. Let me just, I'm proposing that we do not include it, and let me see if people agree with not including it. Bill?
I agree with that.
Matt?
I agree.
Corey?
I agree.
Nikki?
Agree.
Jack?
Agreed.
Steve?
Agree.
Russ?
Agree.
Eileen?
Yes, agree.
Me too. Okay, so 9-0.
That's good.
Okay, good.
Great. Well, it's just important to allow all of these ideas out there to hear from everybody about what they're thinking. Okay, I'm gonna, it's what, 8:08?
If I might suggest, Pat, try not to bring us things in the future that have the town manager having authority over the elected boards.
Okay. Well,
Well, I think
I hear you, and now we've really had that discussion, and it's something that we really wanted to make sure that everybody's had an opportunity to kind of weigh in on. Great. So it's 8:08. Do you want me to continue? There's only one section that we're talking about that's still left in this section. So let me try to get through this and talk to you about it. This is on the removal of the town administrator.
My suggestion is go to the selectmen and talk to them, not us.
well, Jack, let's just go through this.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the current language of regarding the removal of the town administrator allows the select board to remove them with 4 members removed, and there's a 90-day notice or 90-day severance pay, or a combination of those. And because we've talked about having a contract and having the terms of employment governed by contract, we've included language that is the select board, by an affirmative vote of at least 4 members, may remove or suspend the town administrator from office. Such removal or suspension shall be conducted consistent with any procedures or conditions set forth in the contract between the town and the town administrator, provided that no such contract shall diminish or alter the authority granted by this section. It makes 2 changes. It adds suspension as an explicit remedy along with removal. And it also replaces the specific procedural requirements in the 90 days and reverts to the contract. So Reading, Walpole, and Winchester also include procedural requirements for removal. Some include severance pay and the right to a hearing, etc. So, but there are really trade-offs to these 2 approaches. You can have things completely governed by the contract. On the other hand, some feel that the prospective town manager or town administrator will want to isn't in a great position to bargain for procedural remedies with the town, and like to see that already in the charter that they have, for example, the right to a hearing before being removed. There's some more explicit ones. But given the fact that we've already talked about, one proposal that we have is to allow this to be just governed by the contract, and that's it. On the other hand, if you have more of an interest in creating right in the charter a procedural requirement, for example, the right to request a hearing over the removal or suspension, we can add that too. That would maybe be the next step. The third step is including this provision of notice and severance, which what we were hearing from you is we'd rather have that governed by the contract rather than right into the charter, because that's something that then could not be changed without a charter change.
My bias on this one is that I think keeping it in the contract is a good idea. There are certain things where 90 days would not be, if the way it's written, that kind of guarantees a 90-day thing, even if it's some sort of a really awful thing they do. And they're, just open the newspaper and you can see how many really awful things some people have been doing. And they should be fired immediately with not 90 days of pay for their bad behavior. So I think, and those kinds of things are usually in a contract where if you're fired for cause, you lose your severance or however it's worded. So I personally like keeping it in the contract rather than putting it in the charter. But I do like the idea of documenting that the right to a hearing. I think that is fair. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I like it with the addition of the ability for a hearing.
Thirded.
Oh, that's really cool. That's
Okay.
really cute.
Jack, do you have something to say? I see your hands
No,
up.
I agree that, for someone who's terminated 30 days after they come in, shouldn't get 90 days pay.
Exactly. Okay.
So the 90 days is out, but yes, they should have a hearing. They should be able to have their right to argue and defend themselves.
Okay. Anybody else? Any comments on this one?
I just have a quick question, and I may have missed it, or I just don't know enough about kind of HR. Why would those provisions, such as like a hearing or the specific severance or notice, be in the charter? Is it because it's such a public role, or like why would Pat? You mentioned that prospective town managers might be looking for that in the charter to know that they have that kind of recourse. But why would they be looking for that in the charter as opposed to an employment agreement, I guess?
It's about having a transparent agreement between the town and the town administrator, where they have kind of a floor of a minimal due process. They're not governed by collective bargaining agreements, so they don't have the grievance process. They want to make sure that they're not let go at the whim of a change in politics. So if an entirely new select board came in and wanted to go another direction, it's a little bit of a cushion against being let go just because there's been a change in direction politically. It's a bit of a stopgap. So
what you might be saying is the best qualified town administrator that you're trying to hire may walk away and not consider coming here because he doesn't have any guarantees.
well, I wouldn't say that would be, and I've talked to some of our other staff about this, and it may not be the deciding factor that they walk away, but it definitely shows, if you add at least a public hearing portion to this, it shows a willingness to make sure that there's a public process before they're let go. Otherwise, it can be written into the contract, these things like severance pay, or the process can be written into the contract, but there's no guarantee that someone coming in has the has the same power as the town to negotiate that situation. Frankly, when people move from one town to another to take these types of positions, oftentimes there's a physical distance between the towns, and they have to move their families. And having this one part of the procedure be put in the charter gives them some confidence that there'll be a public procedure. On the other hand, from a town's perspective, it also does require that procedure. So if the town wants maximum flexibility with no liability for providing a public hearing, you could take away that altogether.
Okay. Any other questions, comments?
I had one. So Pat, are these contracts public information? I guess I should say that I did look, and I forget what town I was looking at, but her contract as town manager was there. But are they all public information? I mean, are they all out there that you can look?
I don't think most have them up on their websites. There may be some way to request them, but I don't want to give an opinion on that. But in general, they're kept. Obviously the bottom line's there. If an issue comes up under the contract is produced to show whether there's been a violation of the contract. I think they're likely public records, but whether there's any exceptions to any part of them, I wouldn't say.
Okay,
there may be
so
private information that's not revealed in them, but in general, most of the provisions would be public records.
So I guess what we're saying is what we'll be voting on is whether Pat will include in the wording the language of this, the general one where it's in the contract, and then adding the right to a hearing is what we're suggesting.
I'm cool with continuing that. I just want to note that if we adopt this and then we end up adopting the language, I want to make sure that at least in the transitionary portion of the charter, should it get accepted, we make sure that we accommodate this language for whatever existing contract for the length of its duration, such that, if a current town administrator, already signed up with this as the expectation, I wouldn't want to pull it out from under their legs.
You're talking, okay, the current language, the 90 days.
Yeah, if this language already exists out there, and then
Yeah, I think at that point we probably need to just take a look and see whether the town administrator in their contract has the 90 days. My guess is they probably do.
Mm-hmm.
So at which point it becomes a non-issue.
Yep.
But I think that is certainly, that's a check thing that will need to a transitional activity that will have to take place. Okay, so let's vote on whether to include this with the wording about the right to a hearing. Bill?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
Corey?
Yes.
Nikki?
Yes.
Okay. Jack?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Russ?
Yes.
Eileen?
Yes.
And me, yes. So 9-0. Okay. And
Okay, great.
the last one, right, Pat?
I think that was it, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Did I
Good.
was it too soon? So the next thing we were going to briefly talk about, I think given the time, we're not going to start anything new tonight, but I believe that we had talked about an article that I believe Eileen had circulated. Let's see.
Oh, Bedford. Is that the one?
Bedford thing. Yeah.
And the crux of the article is just the importance of boards and committees being included in an understanding of what's going on with the charter process. And I think you already mentioned, some things that you could do, like, have someone attend a meeting of the board and committee, but we also wanted to talk about what would be a good time to start bringing perhaps a chair of these boards and committees to discuss any potential changes and questions that you have about their roles.
Yes.
I think so. I'm just going to give you a quick overview, but Betsy will kind of talk about a little bit more about when you want them in. We would love it if you would wait at least for us to introduce the next section. not have them right away next week, because we'd like to introduce the next section of the charter and the basic information. And another suggestion we had is, for now, kind of limit this to some of your current boards, your current elected boards and committees, rather than, because that's what we're going to be dealing with in the charter, and you only have so much time. And possibly you can decide at what point you want to start scheduling them to come in, or if you only want to schedule the ones that will be primarily impacted by any changes that you make.
Yeah,
Do we plan to list in the charter the different elected boards? Because
yes.
I'm looking at the index, it's just got 3-2 select board. Are we going to add?
Yeah, I think we said
Those
that
will all be added for next time.
Yeah, it's just, we haven't gotten there yet. So the index
Okay.
will now list all of the, I sent the org chart, looks like something like that Patrick sent me. It's the brand new one.
Yeah.
And it's got the list of all the elected boards on it. We will be talking about all these elected boards, and I don't know what order Pat and Anthony are going to take us through that. But my thought was we should do this in a way that we can invite members of that board, the chair or anybody that the chair's designee, to come in and we can ask questions. I'm not exactly sure how that works. So I need the Collins Center to give us some guidance in terms of timing, because if we're going to invite them to a meeting, we have to give them sufficient notice so maybe they could come. And then we need to probably have, have some time frames associated with it in terms of our discussion with them. And I think that, as Pat said, we'll not this next meeting, but because we'll start into those topics. But I think we need to flush out kind of what that would look like, inviting them in. Are we asking them questions, or are we, what are we doing? We're asking them how they operate today, what's working, what's not. I don't know what the appropriate approach would be to get their input and for us to be able to look at things. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but I think we need to get the elected boards to come to our meetings.
I don't know that we want to put in the charter the day-to-day function of these boards, but just define it as it's a 5-member board elected. At least one term ends, no more than 2 each year. I don't know that we want to go into the detail of them.
Well, that's why we need to. We'll
function of the board. Just define what it is, how it comes to be, and what its authority is.
And I think we'll go through that discussion next time, where Pat and Anthony will walk us through kind of what their thoughts are about what this would look like in a charter. And for those of you who have looked at other charters like Winchester's charter and stuff like that, look at how they have approached, how they have documented their elected boards. Some of them have more detail than others. Some talk about the authority of that. Sometimes, so I think we need to take a look at that. And then we can, in the context of that, we can figure out that. But we also need to, again, decide when we want to invite people in. I just want to be respectful and give them some notice before we do. And maybe part of it is just once we decide all the boards, we can send them all like an email or something, or some sort of communication saying we're going to be talking about this in the context of the charter, and we're going to be inviting you to come in. And again, I'm not 100% sure what that looks like, Pat, and I really think we need your guidance on that.
In some cases, state law tells us what a lot of the authorities and control and responsibilities of separate elected boards are.
Right. That's why I said let's take a look at what other people do in their charters, and then that'll give us an indication of what directions that we could potentially go in. Sorry, Pat.
No, I was going to say we can talk more about this, after we get through this, but that you'll find that it's really a skeleton overview of each board and committee. But there were some choices that, that you've already discussed making, like, for example, appointment, et cetera. So that's going to be one issue that we're going to talk about with the boards and committees. You only have so many meetings, so we'll talk about maybe having a few chairs, or you can have a panel of the elected chairs there if you don't want to go through the same. We'll talk about what works best. If you have, all the chairs of each of the elected boards there, then you can ask kind of the same basic questions to all of them at the same time, or we can split them up into 2 meetings. But we can certainly, it's also a good idea to, when you talk about reaching out, to make sure that the boards and committees are included with the public when you're inviting them to, forums and inviting them to follow you for more information. Just make sure that you're reaching out to the boards as well as just the general public.
Is that something the board could send us in writing and we wouldn't have to have a meeting?
Well, I think
I would say, I think the important thing is inviting them, right? And if they don't want to and want to send it in writing, if that works better for their time, I think the point, and I see this happen in a lot of committees, is that there's at the very end, there's a lot of room for people to say, I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know what they were changing. So the more points along the way you can include people, even if they don't follow along and say no, you've given them the opportunity to participate if they want to. And whether you want, you can do a separate meeting outside of your usual meetings if you want to ask them questions. If you're concerned about times, we'll talk through a lot of the options. But in any event, it won't be next week because we want to really start getting into some of this. We want to get to the point where you have questions for them. So that's going to take at least a meeting for us to kind of gel what kind of questions you might have for them.
I think in the meantime, it would be good for everybody to take a look at some of the other charters. Reading's got one, Winchester's got one. Those are the two are my 2 go-tos. I take a peek at Natick periodically, but they're not on our list. But take a look at what they're doing in terms of how they document their boards and elected boards. And also take a look at the elected boards that they have. I guess we should discuss whether the elected boards we have are the ones we should have. And we'll go through that, I think, as well at that next meeting.
Yes.
But
so if you take a look at the chart that we made with elected versus appointed boards, that's a good reference point. And I don't know if I know we sent it out before, and I don't know if you sent it out again. We had that framework for considering elected versus appointed. I wasn't sure if I saw that you sent it out with the last batch or not, but I know it's gone around. It's called Framework for Considering Elected and Appointed Offices. So if you take a look at those, we can have some initial discussions and decide where you want to hone down, if you have any thoughts on changing any of them.
right.
Have you sent that out, Betsy?
Yes,
document?
I have, but I can send it. I've sent out an awful lot of stuff, and some of it's actually on our website as well.
Okay.
It's a 1-page sheet that goes through it, but I think I'll send it out again because it'll make your lives easier rather than going through a whole pile of stuff. And I'm going to send out the minutes that I screwed up this time. So Meg, I'm sorry. I think I'm not sure what I did, but I'll send out the framework for elected boards. I think everybody's got the ability to go find the Winchester, Reading, or whomever you want to go find on that. And then there are also the competitive elections analysis, which I did send out before, so hopefully you have that. And the terms of elected boards is another document. Elected appointed officials and their terms. And and then the org chart. So I'll send stuff out, and if anybody feels like they don't have something they need, let me know. I can send that out. But I've been also working with Laura to update the website. So on the information, which are benchmark information, on our website, a lot of that information are under resources. I've been really trying to beef up the website and putting some stuff in there, like all the minutes and all the rest of it. So let me know, or if there's anything. And Russ, you and Nikki and Jess should feel free to put anything up there that I missed. So Laura will put it up. Actually, Laura puts it up for us. Okay. Anything else?
Next meeting, April 7th.
April
7.
is that the second? Yes. Yes, April 7th.
At the annex.
Yes, I asked Patrick to book us for the rest of the year into the annex, so we could come back in person. He told me he would take care of that. So
Not that I'm being picky, but is the 7th the second Tuesday? Is that the first Tuesday in April?
Hold on.
It's the first Tuesday, the 7th.
Oh yeah, it's the second Tuesday. It's the 14th.
You want to change it to the 14th?
Well, it's the second Tuesday is when we usually meet, second and fourth.
All right.
So that would be the 14th. Thank you, Russ. And the
28th.
Yep. Okay, any other questions before we go? So we're done with the town administrator. Oh, yeah, Eileen.
Yeah, so I like this org chart. I like the colors. But what I think is missing is the housing authority. And, I think the town administrator has a very sort of de minimis touch on that. I think he just signs off on something each year. But the housing partnership.
Yeah, and ISAC's not there either. So those are the two things. So I will let Patrick know.
Okay, thanks. That's all I have.
Anything else that anybody noticed? Yeah.
I think that just we haven't decided yet on a name change or not for the town administrator. So I didn't want that to drop off of our radar.
Yeah, I actually asked the Collins Center to delay that discussion. I thought we should get through the town elected boards and committees, and let's figure out what this role is going to be doing, and so that we can then look at the role in its entirety and then decide what we think the title should be. So we're going to dance a little bit around that until we get to the other end of the next section. Okay. So any other questions? We're done with the town administrator for now. It's going to all show up in the next version of the charter, which Pat will update. And when she does, I will get it out to you. And it will be dated after today's date. If there's nothing else, Jack, you have something?
Nope.
Oh, okay. If there's nothing else, then I'll take a motion.
So moved.
Motion to adjourn, second.
All in favor? Hands?
Aye.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.